Good evening, St. Louis, and welcome into the City Central postgame live from the bowels of Energizer Park. I'm Matthew Rocchio here live now on STL Sports Central, talking you through a rough one down in St. Louis City. It's been a rough season. I'm not surprised it's been a rough game. They draw 1-1 versus FC Dallas, but the big problem with taking 1 point today and why all of the post-game audio you'll see has players talking about why this feels like a loss is because Dallas went down to 10 men, losing a man in the 16th minute of the game, which means that St. Louis City had 74 minutes, plus stoppage time, which is a very short stoppage time, to play with, to score multiple goals, to win a game and take home 3 points in front of their home crowd. And they completely failed to do that. They got one from Celio Pompey, which was an absolute golazo from outside, but they never, ever dissected or really beat the Dallas defense. Again, in games like this, you're always going to have cases. Sorry, I'm going to grab my water because I'm coughing. You're always going to have cases in games like this when a team goes down with a red card early, where they just batten down the hatches. So I was tweeting about it right when it happened. We've had games in the past under Bradley Carnell. I'm blanking on which one it was because they won the last time that Dallas came here and got a red card early. But there was a game that very first season where a red card happened early, and St. Louis City really didn't do anything offensively afterwards. And people were pretty pissed off because of that. And Bradley Carnell explained it in a similar way, which is the team couldn't break down a team in a low block. Now, the issue there is that was a problem in 2023. It's a problem in 2024, and it's obviously still a problem in 2025. We've spent a lot of the latest post games talking a lot about the problems with the defense. But we could spend a lot of time this post game. In fact, we'll spend a great majority of this post game, though it won't be a long one, talking about offensive futilities. Because if you break down the numbers, it's a completely disappointing game from an offensive perspective. I mean, Conrad Vollum just talked about it. Celio Pompeu talked about it. You can read my tweets right now on X at ROCC STL. Celio Pompeu was pissed off at the lack of offense, the lack of scoring from this team, and eggplant emoji jumping into the chat. And please, if you're watching this here on YouTube on STL Sports Central, in addition to liking, sharing, and subscribing, jump into the chat and keep the conversation going. Eggplant emoji, what a disgrace. They've had less embarrassing performances in some of their losses. This match proved more than any other how bad they really are. I think there's a lot of other games that have proven how bad this team is. I think early red cards just change how football games and soccer games are going to be played. And so I don't think this is a good indication of what St. Louis City is overall. But to your point, it gives us a lot to break down problems with the offense. Because, again, David Critchley said it, and Conrad Vollum both said they've never seen games where their teams have ever produced 43 shots. So this is an anomalous game. And when you produce that many shots, you have to score more than one goal. If you believe in XG, and maybe you don't, but if you believe in XG, and let's just look at it now, let's pretend like you do believe in it now to give you a good look at the numbers from this game. 43 shots. How many of those shots are actually deadly? Because that's how we're going to grade a team. You get that many shots, you don't score any. Did the defense just play absolutely outside their mind, or does your offense suck at scoring? Which one is it? Or is it a little column A, little column B? Well, in this game, 30 of those 43 shots by the XG were less than 10% chances to be goals. That's bad shot taking right there. And that's not bad finishing necessarily, because I know a lot of people are on players for their bad shot taking. That XG is telling you what happens right before. It takes everything that happens before the ball connects with the foot. So if you're getting bad XG chances, it's because the defense, there's a lot of defenders in front of you. The goalkeeper's in a good position, and the ball is far away or in a non-dangerous position relative to the goalkeeper. So 30 of their 43 shots are just less than 10% chances. Throwaway chances that you finish at a 2% to 9% level. Those shots simply aren't happening in the MLS. You're not scoring on very many of them. If you want to talk about shots you do score on in the MLS, we're talking about shots that produce 0.33 to 0.99 XG. St. Louis City had one of them. I don't care. Remove the finishing from the equation. Producing one very good attempt on goal against a 10-man team is simply not good enough for a professional MLS squad. Full stop. And listen, Celio Pompeu, Conrad Vollum, David Critchley, all three of the people in the postgame presser said similar things to the effect of this is not good enough. And that, to me, is all the numbering I need to do to talk about this not being good enough. This team had all the chances in the world. And yes, finishing has been a problem with this team. This team's never going to be a good finishing team. So I'm looking at the quality of chances, and the quality of chances were not good enough. Part of that is because Dallas is just building a wall and parking the bus. Jose Mourinho would have had an absolute, ball of a time with this game. So they're parking the bus. But to David Critchley's point, I tweeted this out again. You can check it out at Rock STL because a lot of these tweets from today's postgame were very insightful. That's why I went to the postgame before doing this. David Critchley talked a lot about how there's a lack of execution, and he specifically mentioned operating in 2 to 3 yard space. It wasn't why Celio Pompeu had a good game, but Celio Pompeu is the kind of player who can make things happen against a defense like that. But no one was making those moments. The little inside, the little quick 1-2 passing, the champagne soccer, as people like to call it. This team doesn't do that. And so they're not going to generate a lot of chances against a walled-up defense, but it wasn't good enough. You have to create more than one very good chance against a defense that should be throughout the entire game scrambling. You watch soccer enough and you see that 10-man squads are usually scrambling. Yes, it helps when it's a tie game. They're not already down points, but that team at no point seemed like they were scrambling. You had one little point in the 60s from about 58 to maybe like 64 where you had them scrambling for a little bit, but you didn't get the second goal. So what does it matter? And making a team scramble who's a man down for 10 minutes, that's a pathetic outcome. Bottom line, like, you are not a good professional team if you cannot make another not very good professional team actually squirm when they're a man down. Like that there's a reason why red cards are treated the way they are in soccer. They doom your team. You should be screwed. To Celio Pompeu's point, nothing against Dallas, but City should have won this game 5-0 because of all the chances they had, and they didn't, and that's a huge problem. Abo says they need to sign 2 DPs in the attack. Also, if MLS adds a 4th DP, look out. Like, listen, I agree they need to. Part of the reason, and this is going to be a very differing things here. So I asked Celio Pompeu, listen, it's a lot of crosses, and they weren't being very successful. When a team's a man down and they're just packing the middle like that, do you just have to keep going for crosses, or can you try to break through the middle? And he essentially said, yeah, you can try to dribble through the middle, but you have to take what a professional defense is giving you. And a professional MLS defense is giving you, my apologies for doing that. What if a professional MLS defense is giving you chances of a wide open flank to cross after cross after cross after cross, you have to take that if that's what they're giving you. Essentially is what Celio said. They need more of those 2 to 3 yard moments. There's no doubt about it. But if a team's just going to give you the flanks, I'm not sure if it's smart to say, no, keep ramming it down the middle and turning the ball over and giving them counterattacking chances. I don't know if that's the smarter idea as well. So my point is why I'm bringing this up when Albos talks is because talk about some of their highest price players. João Klaus and DPs. João Klaus, Marcel Hartl, Edward Leuven. All players who thrive when they are getting the ball and doing things in the middle of the pitch. And that was completely taken away from them. So this is going to be a game where the lack of big names is going to be accentuated because your big names are all playing in the center of the pitch, and all of them are going to get neutralized by this game plan from Dallas. So I understand. So people want more wingers. I currently think that if they're going to spend a lot of money, I would like to see them spend a lot of money across multiple positions. One of them, in my opinion, has to be fullback. You saw that today. Teams can compact the middle. You need more dangerous fullbacks. Maybe to your point, Abo, they need more dangerous people in the center who can break things down 1v1. Klaus is not a break them down 1v1 kind of player. Hartl's a great playmaker. He covers a lot of ground. He's one of the best key passers in the entire MLS. But is there a question about him tonight? Does he need to be the kind of guy who can open things up at least 3 or 4 times for your offense through the center of the field, even against a compact defense? I think that's a fair enough criticism. Edward Leuven thrives off finding those wide spaces to switch and also putting things up the middle. Wide spaces to switch were pretty easy. He wasn't finding a lot of space up the middle, especially in the second half. So I think those are fair criticisms of the big-name players for City. But I do think the answer from Celio does deserve some credit because that is an MLS player giving us the answer, which is you got to take what the defense gives you. I want to know what people think about that because I know a lot of people are complaining about the crosses. And I thought Celio's answer was interesting about, again, that's a professional defense, full of professional teams as well. If they want to take away the middle, and that's their entire goal, they're going to be able to do that in a lot of games. It still shows you that City doesn't have enough, but I don't know if that's where the crucial criticism comes from is, well, they shouldn't have tried all those crosses. You guys are doing great in the chat. Let's get to those. Eggplant emoji. Why was there anyone that played worse than Durkin? He was mostly responsible for the goal given up and had abundance of chances in the box. So in a game where a lot of players absolutely launched balls into the stratosphere over and over again, Chris Durkin actually had a great game of not doing that. That extra pass, he got the ball in the middle of the box, had a good chance just to launch one, and he shuffled it outside, I think, to Klaus, who put a good chance on the net. I love extra passes like that in the box. And for a guy like Durkin, who's been such a bad finisher this year, I actually thought he played better in the offensive box than the defensive box. But to your point, Eggplant emoji, he makes the absolutely just, that's one of the worst touches I've seen from an MLS player this season from Chris Durkin on that pass from Edward Leuven. And as David Critchley said, you don't have to play it out of the box in that situation. You don't have to get fancy. You're a man up, boot it into the seventh row, and live to play another game. That was a rough one from Durkin. Listen, I think the writing on the wall is there for Chris Durkin. There's a lot of changes coming in this offseason, and I'd be interested to see if he's part of those. I already mentioned a fullback being one of the $3 million. That's kind of the what I'm saying right now is multiple $3 million moves. Left back would be one of the $3 million moves. Right back could be one of the $3 million moves, depending on what they think about Totland in the new regime. And center and six would be one of my $3 to $5 million moves as well for St. Louis City. There's no doubt about that. Abo Hardell needs a break. He's not doing well in the small critical moments. Playing every minute of the season hurts him on a day like today. Yeah, they've talked a lot. Bradley Carnell talked a lot more in that 2023 season about players being in the red. And considering your point about how Hartel's played so much, and we've seen the stats now that he's one of the distance covered leaders in the entire league, that's a good point to make. But he is one of your most dangerous players. Taking him out today doesn't make St. Louis City better. I mean, he's statistically one of the best playmakers in the middle of the field. But again, if you just clog the middle of the field and take away his ability to find space, take away the ability for runners to get involved, that's going to be pretty problematic. Samuel Howe, all right, at least none of our teams lost today. That's a way to look at it. Oh wait, never mind. Wait a second. Versus a 10-man team. What the? Yeah, and that's the thing, and that's why Celio Pompeo and all the players today are calling it a loss. And David Critchley said the vibes are down in the locker room because this should feel like a loss for this team because red cards should be the end of it. Celio 5-0 is how Celio put it. That's all you need to really say. And Conrad Vallon put it very succinctly in another way. Why did St. Louis City lose today? Because they were bad in both of their boxes. They got 65 touches in the opposition's box and got one goal. And that goal came on a touch that was outside the box, which means 65 touches in the opposition's box led to absolutely 0 goals, which is, I've used this word and I'll use it again, that's pathetic for an offense to do that. We've had games where St. Louis City scored 2 goals on 25 touches in the opposition's box, and both the goals came from actual touches in the box. So, 65 touches in the box for Bubkiss for nothing. Yeah, I'm going to keep saying the word pathetic because that's what that is from the offense. And again, this is a post-game and a midweek show that's been talking a lot about the defense lately. Nothing to say about the defense today. They screwed up the one goal, but that was Durkin blowing it from the midfield. That wasn't even the defense actually being bad. Falu Fall had some good passing. Had a couple insane passes, in my opinion. That's why they signed him. But the defense was barely even tested, so that's not even a point. This is all about the offense struggling. Scott Parrott jumping in on the chat. Please keep on jumping in on the chat, everybody. You guys are killing it. Trying to find some kind of positive after this one. Fall looked good tonight. I had a great beef wrap from Medina, and McSorley looked good. How about Brendan McSorley, guys? I know Makai Joyner had his moment with the goal last week, and that was in a loss. But can we talk about Brendan McSorley a little bit? If you didn't see the clip I tweeted out, we know John Hackworth's a big fan of his, so the fact that John's making some of the decisions now shouldn't surprise anybody. He calls him one of the highest potential players on this team. I think that's going to rub some people wrong because he's 23 years old and is just now getting his first team contract. I think there's always room for late bloomers, even in a sport that is so defined by wunderkinds and things like that. And I think Brendan McSorley showed today why he's got the potential to be a high potential late bloomer because he's just got a feel for it. I use the comparison to James Milner, who, if some of you are EPL fans, you'll know who he is. Longtime midfielder, played for Liverpool, Manchester City, a bunch of different squads over the years. Not the fastest player in the world, but he just never stops moving. And that's how Brendan McSorley gets his chance for not a scissor kick, but his no-look whatever kind of kick you want to call it as. That's why he gets the second chance as well. Brendan McSorley, he just constantly moves. This is a great game for a guy like Brendan McSorley because there's not going to be a lot of space open in the box, but he's going to be a guy who the little bit amounts of space that are open, he's going to find the ability to exploit it. And that's why he was successful tonight. There's not a lot of space, and he was able to exploit it when guys like Simon Bescher and Zhao Klaus were unable to. And that says something about Brendan McSorley's skill, and that says something about what he could be going forward. It might be a little bit out of sorts. It might not mean anything because it was from a friendly, but John Hackworth said he was the second best player or one of the best players in that Aston Villa friendly. And I think that says something. Samuel Howe with a couple of comments here. I think it's unfair to expect a blank sheet. Therefore, I blame our offense. Highest potential doesn't mean anything. Reach potential is all that matters. I think you're right about that. I think the comment about potential coming from John Hackworth and why I bring it up now is because of his age. People really write off super draft picks. They have no reason not to. The history of super draft picks in the MLS, beyond the top 10 is not that rich. I think it's changing. You look at mid-round picks like Jose Kojima having the impact he had, third-round picks like Brendan McSorley eventually making impacts down the road. Joey Zielinski had a first-team deal as a second-round pick. I think the MLS Super Draft is changing a little bit. So I mentioned the potential because one thing that's important looking forward to this team next year, it's going to have so many roster spots open, and the overwhelming majority of those roster spots are going to be those bottom 10 spots. And those are open now for guys like Brendan McSorley and maybe even more so Mekhi Joyner, who maybe he can take a higher spot is what I actually should be saying. Those guys can now eat some of those spots. They can give you depth that you can be excited about. And that's another thing about this season that's kind of exposed St. Louis City is that there's not useful depth, but there's also not exciting depth. So, I mean, it's hard to get – it's why I don't blame the fan base for not being too excited about things. I blame them if they're saying that the love is gone and things like that. But not being excited is completely fair because – the young guys who are here haven't played a lot, and because the academy is is only 4 years old and the team's only 3 years old, there's not a ton of names to get excited about. So a guy like Brendan McSorley, that's why I bring up the potential comment from a guy like John Hackworth. And I know, again, Hackworth is clearly a big fan of Brendan McSorley, so maybe take it with a little bit of a grain of salt. That's fair. Eggplant emoji, does a draw like this hurt Critch's case to be a head coach in 2026? This game for me wouldn't really factor into my evaluation because you can't really prepare for that level of a team just bottling up the middle. And I thought his mid-game moves were fine. I thought they looked pretty good in the first 15 minutes after halftime, which is something you should be indicative of what the manager is doing in the room and things like that. No, this shouldn't hurt his case. There's 4 of the previous 5 games that should probably hurt his case, but this would not be one of them because it's just the first 16 minutes of the game and the last 74 minutes are a completely different game in a lot of really odd, weird ways. He had him prepared to face a Dallas defense that was going to have a lot of guys back. I don't think he had him prepared for a team that was going to be parking the bus like this. And you shouldn't be preparing for that. So you can criticize David Critchley if you didn't think they changed things enough. But I would argue that getting 43 shots against a 10-man defense means that they did adapt enough. It's just that, again, the players on this team simply aren't executing enough. And I think they feel that as well. I don't think David Critchley's done enough to win this job over the last 4 or 5 weeks. But I don't think there was any issue necessarily with the game plan tonight. This is 100% in my mind a game that you can watch and say this is an execution issue almost wholly. Because even the let's talk about the lineup. I talked about it already. I asked David Critchley about Simon Bescher instead of Tomas Ostrak. With the 5-4-1 that Dallas likes to play, there aren't spaces between the line for Tomas Ostrak to win the ball and command the middle of the field and make those long runs that stretch out defenses. So you get Simon Bescher in there to give you 2 nines in a lot of looks, and now you can press the team with a lot of runs against the back line. The problem is a lot of those runs against the back line are going to evaporate when a team parks the bus like that, even when they are a man down. And that's what we saw the overwhelming majority of this game. But I do want to say the bottom line is that it's not good enough. Conrad Vollum said it, and this is the most succinct way to put it. They failed to win the game in both boxes. And this is a game that you have to win the game in both boxes. They got the chances in the opposition's box. The most ever by this team by a wide margin, I'm guessing. The highest numbers we've seen this year are in the 40s. I'd be surprised if we saw a higher number than the 50s in 2024, 2023, which means we're looking at the highest number ever for a St. Louis City team to possess the ball in the opposition's box, and they got one goal out of it. Not good enough. You make one mistake defensively and you lose 2 points. That's not good enough. What is good enough, though, our good friends over at DraftKings Sportsbook, where the crown is yours because, ladies and gentlemen, it's on its way here to Missouri. Finally, Missouri, get ready. The wait is almost over. DraftKings Sportsbook, America's top-rated sportsbook app, is coming soon to the Show Me State, and you can sign up today. New Missouri customers can get $300 in bonus bets when DraftKings launches on December 1st in Missouri. Download now and go place a $5 bet when we go live on December 1st. DraftKings Sportsbook brings you everything you need to elevate your game day, including live in-game betting, lightning fast payouts, and endless ways to get in on the action, all right from your phone. And when we officially go live in Missouri, you'll be betting with the sportsbook app trusted by millions. Safe, secure, and has fast money withdrawals. And you're playing on the Pick 6 app, make sure to use our promo code STL Sports. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use code STL Sports to get $300 in bonus bets with just a $5 bet when they go live on December Sports. That's code STL Sports again to grab $300 in bonus bets when DraftKings goes live on December 1st. Code STL Sports in partnership with DraftKings Sportsbook, where the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. 21 plus, physically present in Missouri. Eligibility restrictions apply. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. Exclude customers who redeem pre-launch sign-up offer. Terms at sportsbook.draftkings.com/promos. I'm going to mosey on over to my Twitter, try to get some of these comments here. I refuse to give $8 a month to Elon, and so we couldn't go live on Twitter like I wanted to today because I thought it'd be really fun today. People are not happy about this one. It's frustrating to watch, and I can't blame them. Frustrating is a word that came up a lot today. Conrad Vollum used the word frustrating. Celio Pompeu used the word frustrating. It was very obviously the most frustrated player we've dealt with a lot this season. It was a rough game for St. Louis City at the end of a rough season. There was also a little bit of chicanery with the officials. I don't know what the hell 4 minutes of stoppage time is all about. I mean, they are all over the place. There were long, huge gaps in that game. They were trying to kill a lot of momentum. They were trying to kill a lot of time. David Critchley talked about that. It was hard to get any momentum when Dallas is taking 45 seconds for every corner kick, for every free kick, for every stoppage and things like that. That was a really odd thing because when we've had games in the last week with 12 minutes of stoppage time and the entire second half, we're thinking about how we're talking up in the press box. This is going to be 8 minutes. This is going to be 15 minutes of stoppage time. And they throw up 4. That was an insane decision from the officials. I don't think, they're not doing it on purpose, but multiple weeks in a row of St. Louis City fans feeling like they're getting the knife twisted in their side. That's the last thing you want to see for the fan base that's already struggling. Last few comments here, then we'll get out of here. Surely, whoever replaces Lutz will get their own head coach, Scott. That's true. I think there's no doubt about that. I think they should give Critchley a chance in the offing the same way they did John Hackworth last year, but these last few weeks might have hurt that. And whatever the new sporting director wants to do, we have no idea. They talk about how the philosophy is going to be the same, which means I expect guys like John Hackworth and David Critchley, who know this philosophy like the back of their hand, to continue and remain in large parts with this club. But I don't know how many times you can promote a guy to interim head coach, not give him the job, and expect him to keep on working for your organization diligently. It's worked very well with John Hackworth. He now wears lots of hats. But I don't know if you can keep getting away with it with some of these very talented coaches. They might not be ready in our mind, but they're also getting rosters halfway through the season that are incomplete, unfinished, and not ready to do what they really need to do. And so, again, this is not a game where I put any blame on David Critchley. This was a lack of execution by the players on the field, and that's how St. Louis City draws 1-1 against for the overwhelming majority of the game, a 10-man FC Dallas side. This has been the City Central postgame. Big shouts to Samuel Howe, who says big day today on STL Sports Central. It was a big day today. Shouts to everybody. We've been live from Columbia, Missouri, all the way to downtown St. Louis. Today we had the pregame show for Mizzou down at the bar My House in Columbia, Missouri. We had the postgame also with a lot of people live from Columbia, Missouri for their big win over the Kansas Jayhawks. That's with a lowercase K, by the way, as it always always should be. We also had Cardinals post-game today and, of course, City post-game as well. So it was a big game on STL Sports Central today. Hope everyone had a wonderful day. Thank you so much for joining me late today for another rough game with St. Louis City SC. We're going to talk it all over this week. Hopefully, we're going to be talking with new first-teamer Brendan McSorley, who had a big game tonight. Anyway, we're going to be breaking this one down midweek. We missed last week midweek show. Hopefully, we're going to have a midweek show this week because there's a lot to break down from this game because 43 shots and only one goal means we have a lot of criticism to get through. Thank you so much for joining us for the immediate criticism tonight on City Central Postgame. Stay tuned later on this week for an episode of Boots on the Ground in the midweek. And as always, make sure you like, share, and subscribe right here on the STL Sports Central YouTube page. Those likes, those shares, those subscriptions, they help out. They help us keep bringing these shows to you guys all across the game. We got Blues coming up, Illini football. We also had a big show today. I can't forget the Illini. I know Mizzou had a big day, but don't forget, if you're a big Illinois fan, this is the one place you need to be coming for your Illini football because we got the Illini guys putting out shows. They did an hour-and-a-half show today. They had 5 different people run through the show. We just got one here on City. So we're doing all different things. We're running the gamut. We're going – heck, I forgot. You know what? I need to restart this entire thing because we went from Columbia all the way up to Champaign. We're covering multiple states, multiple regions, and all the teams you need in your St. Louis area right here on STL Sports Central, your one-stop shop. So make sure you, again, hit that like, share, and subscribe button. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. Have a great day, St. Louis. This has been your City Central Postgame. I'm Matthew Rocchio on STL Sports Central.